These are the cream soda switches from Gateron. Now, unlike most switches these days, which are basically collaborations between vendors and manufacturers, the cream sodas are actually a passion project of a content creator named Punkshoo. According to his showcase video he made on the switch design, which I've linked in the description below, they're called cream sodas to symbolize the old days, when things were easier. Now that speaks deep into my soul, and these switches live up to that spirit in more ways than just the color scheme. So let's jump right into the review, right after you think back to those simpler times when you click that like button. Now Gateron needs no introduction, as they're pretty much the gold standard when it comes to Cherry MX clones. From the venerable Gateron Yellow at the budget end to the higher tier and higher priced ink-based switches, they're known for producing bangers no matter your budget or experience level in the hobby. The cream sodas definitely fall onto the higher tier end of the spectrum, so let's talk about why. The cream soda is a linear switch that comes with a milky top, an ink bottom, and a long pole palm stem, which I measured at 13.29 millimeters. It also comes with what's listed as an 18 millimeter long single stage spring, but I measured it at closer to 16 millimeters, as you can see on the screen. With a listed 63.5 gram spring weight, I checked the actuation force and measured it at roughly 52 grams, so the listed 63.5 grams is a bottom out weight.
So it actuates at roughly 52 grams.
I measured total travel at 3.46 millimeters, which is slightly shorter than its rated travel of 3.7 millimeters. According to this Reddit group buy post, the switch does come factory lubed on the rails with PTFE oil, which has a consistency similar to GPL 106, and there was the slightest bit of spring noise when actuating the loose switch right by my ear. But they have no crap sounds during normal typing. Let's take a listen to these switches stock. These switches sound really good stock, and I personally really like the spring weight and the overall feel of these switches, which definitely are very refined. The overall consensus on the cream sodas seems to be that extra lube and film isn't necessary, but I wanted to see how they change with my normal lubing of the top housing. So take a listen to the comparison between the factory lube and a full lube with Krytox 205G0 over the factory lube. To my ears, lubing the top housing does lead to a slightly lower pitch sound signature, as expected, but it doesn't really affect overall smoothness at all. So it really comes down to your personal preference and whether it's worth doing it to you. So now let's talk about whether you should buy these switches. In my time spent in the rabbit hole of this hobby, there have only been a few switches that was love at first keypress, and one of those switches are the Gateron Minx. If you're wondering why I've never actually reviewed the Minx, it's because I immediately soldered them into a build and I haven't gotten around to desoldering them to do a full review. Now there is another reason why I'm hesitant to recommend them, but we'll talk about that in a second. The cream sodas have a very similar material composition with a milky top and an ink bottom, but with a long pull stem compared to the standard length stem on the Mink. They feel amazing stock, and they are another high quality switch that are definitely worthy of any endgame build. But we have to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the price. At 75 cents per switch, the cream sodas are undoubtedly on the expensive side of the switch spectrum, which is another reason why I hesitated to recommend the Minx just overall. After all, when the Oil Kings, which share an ink bottom, run 65 cents per switch, and KS3 or milky yellows can be found for under a quarter a switch, I never understood why minks and now the cream sodas cost 10 cents more than the Oil King when the milky top can be found on their budget switches. Now, I personally love these switches, and they've been very well received as a one-switch alternative to the Cthulhu Franken switch, which would cost over $1 a switch. You also have the added benefit of not having to source and Franken-switch the parts together, and so in that sense, the cream sodas do live up to their design ethos, the spirit of the good old days, and a simpler time, when Franken-switching isn't necessary. Although ironically, the good old days had a lot more Franken-switching. But that's neither here nor there. Speaking of the good old days, let's take a look at today's build, which is the TX60 V1. It's a top mount 60% with an FR4 plate. If you've been around for a while, you'll remember that this was one of my first tester boards for Switch reviews, so I thought I'd bring it out of retirement. Keycaps, of course, are Novel Keys milkshake. Here we go. The PVT keycaps sound really good with the FR4 plate, and it has a really pleasing sound signature that has almost that marbly PE foam sound, but there's actually no foam whatsoever in this build, with only one layer of 3M painter's tape on the PCB. Overall, I really like these switches, but the question remains: should you buy these switches? That depends on your budgetary constraints and your overall feelings about Franken-switching. If you're a regular over at the Switch Modder subreddit, you probably already own Oil Kings, long pole stems, and KS3 yellows, so you could probably build a similar switch yourself with parts already on hand. But if that's not you, and you're looking for a very nice switch for your next full send endgame build, the cream sodas are a great choice. Check out some more keyboard content here. I'm MakerMods, and I'll catch you in the next video.